sisters in the regions who work with us throughout the year in consultation to bring their stories into the global platform. So this year, you're going to get an opportunity to meet them, to hear from them how they do this, how they collaborate with their local, regional UN women offices, and then bring those consultations to the UN. Without further ado, I see Memory's name is Huri Gedelekyan. I would love to be Memory, but please rename yourself. And I'm going to, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm going to introduce our first region to speak about their work. And we're just going alphabetical order. So Africa region, please unmute yourself. Please put yourself on camera and tell us how you work and how we collaborate. Thank you. Memory, Lena, Zonzua, if you're here. You have about 8 minutes. Oh, you have to unmute. Yep.
Okay, I can start. Thank you so much, Huri, and sorry for stealing your name for a few moments. I can't be you at all. So my name is Memory Kachambwa, and I'm the co-chair of the Africa NGO CSW Caucus. I also have with me my 3 other co-chairs. I have Lois, who is with Wildaf, and I'm sure she can introduce herself. I also have Zonziwa, who is our youth co-chair, but also in charge of Central Africa. So Africa, we have 5 regions. We have North, we have representatives in the Africa NGO CSW Caucus from North Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, and which one did I leave? Yes, all the 5 regions of Africa. So the way we work really is each year we work together with the UN Economic Commission for Africa as well as UN Women in terms of putting together the civil society Africa position according to the theme of CSW. So this year we did that. We had a consultation with members from across the region. We had about 600 registrations, and out of those, the meeting that we now had close to 300 people from all the regions in all diversities were able to support and attend. And we did come up with the civil society position for Africa. And we also presented the civil society position to the gender technical team, as well as to the gender ministers. And it's good to know that they took some of our recommendations as well. I think one of the things that I just want to stress and say from the Africa Region Caucus, one of the major things that we are seeing is the issue around connectivity, that there's still a huge gap in terms of the digital divide, in as much as this has allowed us to come to CSW. We know we had a lot of issues with visas in terms of coming physically, but coming on the electronic platform is still leaving a huge component behind. And my other co-chairs can also emphasize around that. Another issue also is maybe to raise and say, we've also found it, we've also been able to map the different governments who can support us in our work, particularly within the negotiations, seeing that this year the negotiations are closed. So we've been strategic enough to map some of the more friendly governments. We know South Africa, Ghana have really been, Namibia, they've really been, Kenya as well, they've really been very supportive in terms of pushing for progressive language with the negotiations. We have also mapped some of the member states from Africa who we know are also quite problematic in terms of sending back and pushing back against progressive language, like Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria. I'll just name just a few. But I think that has also allowed us to be able to be strategic within the space. We've also had our first African Women's Caucus, which was really successful last week. But let me ask my 2 co-chairs Zonziwa as well as Lois to also come in so that I don't take all the time. So Zonziwa and Lois, in case I've left something, please feel free to add.
Yeah, thank you, Memory. I think you covered most of the essential aspects. The fact also that I believe there's been an increase in participation from the grassroots community within the African continent. And though network connectivity continues to remain a challenge, many of whom are also experiencing virtual workshops or virtual meetings for the first time. On that note, I think basically it's been an exciting moment for women, especially those from marginalized communities who have often seen the CSW as a very far platform from them because maybe also of certain limitations, say just affording a passport to travel, which are some of the barriers for women to participate in these spaces. But today, being able to connect with sisters and feminist activists across the globe, engage and also see what it means to be, being part of a policy process actively and not being spoken for, but being, actively involved and defend your own issues. I think that has been one of the high moments for us here within the communities. I'm going to maybe pass on to Laos to also probably share experiences also from West Africa and some of the challenges, just to add on to what you already alluded to. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon. Okay, it's say that in adding on to what Memory and Zonziwa already shared, although COVID had posed a major challenge, we also see that it has also helped increase the visibility of these UN processes and also helped us to bring on board all the diverse groups to be part of this process, and also made us to be able to come up of the conclusion, the position in with respect to the conclusion, the Africa position on what we think about the team. It's going to be better next year because many people have gotten to have been part of this process, which previously they hadn't been able to be part, and it was only left with a few people who used to go to New York and then come back. So I think that in going forward, we started on a very good note, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this process.
Thank you, my African sisters, for all the work that you've been doing. And I just want to, I'm sorry that I'm going to rush through because there's so much I want to highlight from what you're saying. But I want to turn over now to our Asia sisters and just say that there's so much that you said that really applies to all the regions. So I ask my other regional sisters not to repeat what Africa said. For example, the fact that we do have a lot more advocates now because of this virtual possibility, and that's thanks to COVID. So I want to turn the table over, and please stick around and answer questions. Anybody who has questions for Africa region, they are here to respond in the chat. That's going to be the fastest way to do it. My sister Bandana and Huda, please, you have the floor from our Asia region.
Thank you, Hauri. Between Hulda and myself, we'll share the 8 minutes, 4 minutes each. So I am just going ahead with it. I'm Bandana Rana. I'm the co-chair of the NGO Asia Pacific Forum, CSW Forum. And our other co-chair, Carol Shaw, is from Australia. Because of the time zone, she's not able to attend this because it's past midnight there. Well, in terms of how it works, I think our African sisters also said it, but I also wanted to say that during the Beijing Plus 25, when before the COVID hit us, we actually had national level consultations, and then we had a regional, sub-regional level consultation, then a regional consultation, which is usually partnered, collaborated, and supported by the Asia Pacific UN Women, as well as the UNSCAP, the UN entity. First, you have a 2 days NGO consultation, NGO forum, even at the regional level. And then you have the interministerial, usually a week forum, where the issues that came up from the national and regional consultations, the priority themes, the key issues that NGOs have pointed out gets fed into the ministerial forum through the delegates, through lobbying, through advocacy, and sometimes you have civil society. Like for me, even now I'm a member of the government delegation. So we have to find our allies who are in the government delegation who can feed those issues that have come into the actual negotiations of agreed conclusions. In the regional level, it is the regional report that then gets fed into the global agreed conclusions. That is how it works, actually. But now, because of the COVID, I won't say that we had that level of intensity and physical consultations, of course, but it was not possible. But whatever was possible through the virtual medium, the Asia Pacific NGO Committee held 2 consultations. One was in February 6th, we on the priority theme, women's leadership in decision-making in the public life, as well as violence against women. We had intergeneration. The focus this time has been engaging the youth and intergenerational dialogue, focusing on youth engagement. So our consultation was between 2 youth, one from Japan and one from Philippines, and the 2 elderly ones from Afghanistan and New Zealand, which was a cross-learning and sharing. That was one of the Asia Pacific virtual webinar that we held. And then we held the NGO consultation the first week of this CSW on the Asia Pacific level, with, again, more focus on youth engagement. And particularly the NGOs, the civil society from the Asia Pacific region have focused on the languages on sexual and reproductive health and rights. The widows, the issues, progressive language on widows need to be included. Of course, sexual minorities, LGBTQI, it was also there. Migration issue is extremely important for civil society, for migrant women, particularly from South Asia and the whole of Asia, actually, Southeast Asia as well. Climate change was another one that we have been following up. And of course, the shrinking space for the civil society, as well as the security of women human rights defenders to ensure their security. These are some of the major concerns coming from the region, which we are hoping to feed into and follow the negotiations that are going on the agreed conclusions. So this is how it happens. And I think the NGO CSW committee, the global one, congratulations, thank you. If it were not for that, it is very difficult for civil society to feed into and directly intervene in the negotiations and the agreed conclusions. With the virtual communication, I feel one positive thing, and I was just saying, is that it has opened up lots of avenues. I can see direct interventions from the chat to UN Women, to ambassadors, to those who are negotiating. So I think that's a direct intervention, which gives you a lot of gratification, which you couldn't have done it physically, though of course virtual meetings cannot replace the physical relationships. And very soon, I hope next year, we'll be able to meet, all of us will be able to meet again. Thank you so much. I pass on to Hulda, who's from UN Women, and she's the regional planning and coordination specialist. And as I said, we collaborate a lot with UN Women as a supportive partner. So Hulda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bandana, and thank you, colleagues, very much. So I'll just pick up from where Bandana has spoken, because I know there's not much time left. So briefly, yes, in this particular year, we did not have the opportunity for our usual convening just prior to the ministerial meeting on pre-CSW. So what we actually had the opportunity to do was to be able to benefit from the convening, the virtual convening by NGO CSW Asia Pacific, and to participate in that one and to contribute. And it was particularly interesting to be able to see how many young people were both engaged as facilitators, what you'd call MCs. So in a sense, they were the ones basically presenting the questions and speaking to the future of women's feminist leadership and how they see their roles, but also how they're interrogating others in terms of how they can contribute, seeing more young people taking the mantle, so to speak. That was also quite interesting. But secondly, what I think was also interesting about the NGO CSW Asia Pacific one was trying to build the linkages between what is happening at the CSW and also the action coalitions that are being are going to be launched in Mexico. So that was also another important thing, just helping to understand what are the linkages. Why is it that we have the JEF? What is the language that we're bringing to the CSW that will then carry on beyond? Because follow-up is always a critical challenge for all of us. So that is something that we think was particularly helpful. At UN Women, we also tried as much as possible to be able to keep feeding our officers with information that we got from HQ in terms of helping them to be updated about the processes. As soon as the expert group meeting report came out, sharing that so they can share with their constituencies and their colleagues, beneficiaries, and anyone who may be able to benefit from that in terms of just thinking about what it means for the recommendations. When the draft agreed conclusions came out, being able to say, what does it mean in terms of framing discussions and how they feed back to the respective government representatives, also trying as much as possible to encourage that kind of dialogue. At our level, we also tried as much as possible to ensure that we were engaging others. So what we did is that we created a quick fact sheet on women's leadership in Asia Pacific, putting that up in case anyone wants to see what is happening, but also created an online contest, testing people's facts. Basically, we are putting that on Instagram and saying, why don't you test your knowledge? And then with the answers you give, you also trigger some ideas as to how you can promote women's leadership, what you can do, and not just look at women's leadership in a political sense, but across the realm, just to be able to get people who may not necessarily understand how big the gap is, to understand that the gap is huge, to get them to understand that certain assumptions about how much progress has been made are not necessarily as great as we think they are, and there's much more that can be done and should be done to advance this. So let me stop here and over to you. I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you.
Not at all. That was such a perfect combination. Like, I couldn't have written the script better for you to bring in the GEF and the action coalitions and what UN Women is doing with their power, right? You have other tools in your hands that civil society sometimes can't access. Again, I have so much more to add, but I'm going to move on and I'll put some comments myself then, because I feel like I have ideas and things I'm learning as well. So we move on now to our dynamic Latin America sisters. I'm so happy to see Mabel made it as well. I think it's Mabel, Lana, and Maria. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Congratulations, we made it to the second week of the CSW, at least online. Well, let me say that Latin America had a preparatory meeting with the ministers of gender and the high authorities of the entities of gender. And I think that Latin America comes to the CSW with a very strong declaration, based as well on the Women's Regional Conference that that we have in the region every 3 years. I think that we have to underline 3 things. The first is the human rights defenders. This is a very weak link that we are seeing everywhere. No defense from the state. And we have to redouble our efforts to defend the human rights defenders. We have 2 projects, one in Brazil and one in Colombia, but we need to make an effort to do it everywhere. The second thing is the violence in politics. We saw an incremental, violence in politics in the cyberspace, and even aggression that happens in the last general election in Bolivia. This year we had 13 electoral processes in Latin America, so we hope we can stop that. And for that, we are pushing for legislation and we are pushing everywhere to make sure that when women participate, they are not being victims of violence. By the way, today is a very sad day because Turkey removed themselves from the Istanbul Convention. And this is something that we have to all work together in all the regions. This is not possible to back from an international convention protecting women. And the third issue is, what are the real obstacles for women to participate? And one of them is the lack of time, because there's no systems of care. Women cannot allow themselves to participate. They work double or triple than men in the household, so that it's impossible for them to participate. So we have to make sure that there are systems of care everywhere in the world. It's not just allowing women to participate, is allowing women's time to participate as well. So we believe that we have to continue and making sure that that there's no blocks. The blocks we see in the agreed conclusions right now are the typical one of sexual and reproductive health, but also sovereignty. Again, like in the 18th century, putting sovereignty before and diminishing the
Oh, I'm sorry, Maria. I think you froze on us. Okay, I'm sure she's around, but is Mabel on?
Yes, I'm here. Could you listen to me?
Absolutely, we can hear you. I'm so glad you were able to join. And Maria, if you're hearing us, please finish your thoughts. You just froze on us.
Okay, I'm very
Can you hear me
happy.
now?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Go ahead, please, Maria.
So I just wanted to add, don't forget to be connected at the Global Forum of Generation Equality. This is not ending, so please be there next week. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
All right, Mabel, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry because I have a problem today with my connection. I don't know, you know, but well, I'm very happy that we started now this second week with such an important participation from the women in our region, in all the sessions. And I'm so happy that our regional director, Maria Noel, could be with us and supporting us all the time. And I hope that we are going to be able to have an agreed conclusion in which we could move ahead, because it's terrible to think that still today we are discussing issues that we suppose they were solved many years ago. So coming back again is something that we need to request our governments, because it's impossible to do that, and they could do, but this is something in which they demonstrate how small attention and poor attention are they bringing to the women's issues. So we need to denounce, and we need to fight to have a really strong agreement conclusions in order we could go further. But of course, we have the Mexico Generation Equality Forum, in which we could bring all our ideas. But this is not the same, because of course we need to have also this now. And I think this week we need to be very close to our governments, discussing, pushing, and praying to be more ahead and not go back. And of course, what says finally Maria Noel is so important. We need to understand that treaty bodies about women's rights needs to be support. And of course, a government can withdraw, but the parliaments are those that have the capacity to do that. So we need to claim to the Turkish parliament to be ready not to accept this coming back, and also have the possibility to maintain and remain Turkey on this agreement. But we need to be careful in all others. Finally, to say that we hope next year, if it is virtual or presence or hybrid, please, UN Women needs to be sure we, the civil society, can be, some of us, we didn't say all of us, but some of us be present in the negotiations to listen what our governments are saying in order to let our women to know the reality of the discussions. We understand the difference, but it's something that we need to do. Thank you so much. And I hope Lana could say something about the Caribbean. Please, Lana.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here, and just saying hooray for being here for the second week. Basically, Caribbean, the prep that we have was with CARICOM and ministers and bureau agency. And one of the things we want to talk about from LAC is that we had our consultation also, and we had our caucus last week, Friday. One of the things I want to reaffirm is that the space have allowed women who normally would not have shown up at CSW, they have shown up on the platform all over and participating and being part of the process this time around. I'm looking forward for the face-to-face meeting, and I endorse what Mabel and Maria have said, Africa and Asia, and those are the process we are going through right now, and ensuring that the things that we have fought for long ago are now coming up back as things we're now fighting again for. And I think we should not have been doing this, but it's a struggle, and we have to continue to find our government, find the friendly ones, work with them to ensure that the things that we have pursued years ago will stay in the agreed conclusion when the document is finished. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, so perfectly said. You're absolutely right. We have to keep remembering the agreed language and bring it in. Again, so much to say, but I am so excited and honored to welcome our next region, because I'm actually curious, we talk all the time, but this is one of the most volatile regions. And you can imagine Africa, South America, Asia, huge regions. And when they're talking about, like, that's why I like that it was both Caribbean and Latin America. You can't mix this when you say Latin America, right? And with Asia as well, between Australia and South Asia and all of that. But Middle East region comparatively is a very small region, but a very volatile one. So I'm always curious to hear how our sisters advocate in a region like that. And we have some really kick-ass members here to tell us how you're doing it and how are you surviving. I'll start by giving the floor to Lena.
Thank you, Huri. And actually, we count you as one of ours, as you know. So yes, it's going to be myself, Diana, and I'm incredibly happy to have with us Nisreen El-Maula, who's our counterpart from the UN Women Regional Office in Cairo. And I'll explain the connection in a little while. Two things that mark this week, in addition to the immense success of the CSW in its first week. Well, of course, we're incredibly worried, as the sister said, about Turkey pulling out of the agreement, essentially because of the proximity of Turkey, and then of the unfortunate regional influence that it has on our region. And that's something that we're discussing in terms of that's an added burden in terms of lobbying and advocacy. I mean, our regimes already have terrible ideas. We don't want further negative influence. The other thing is, of course, the loss of our pioneer, Nawal Saadawi, yesterday, which is a very, very sad loss. But again, I mean, everything she has done and everything she has said still resonates to date. So I've listened to what, I'm going to be very brief, Huri. I've listened to what the sisters from the other regions have said. There is one thing, there are many similarities and also something that it is entirely different. And what is entirely different from the perspective of the independent feminist movements in the region is the fact that there is a rupture with the regimes from the region. There's a rupture with the regime, and this rupture is not new. It is historical. As we speak, there are women human rights defenders rotting in dungeons everywhere. There are sisters from the LBQ community who are being hounded, oppressed and killed in many of the countries within or beyond conflict. And of course, our regimes, it's quasi impossible to be part of their delegations, whether virtual or physical, when they have such an abysmal record in terms of human rights. So that is never an issue. So what has happened this year, I'll be very quick, and then I want to give the floor to Diana and then to Nisreen. What has happened this year is that on the one hand, and Huri, you were part of this, since we were working for the 2020 CSW, we started consultations, and these what is specific about these consultations is that they continued throughout until now, and they will continue beyond this CSW, and they have materialized in an Arab feminist network. This network has worked on on a number of things, but two things that I want to specify. One, in terms of commenting on the draft, on the zero draft, and also putting up a position paper to the CSW. And this is a position paper that also clarifies our positions vis-a-vis our regimes. What are the issues? First of all, by design, the non-exclusion of specific group, and I will not tire of saying this, by design, the exclusion of groups, including refugee women, and we do know how a small region, yes, Huri, but a huge refugee issue, non-inclusion of refugee women, non-inclusion of migrant women, non-inclusion of LBQ women, and also a total lack of transparency in terms of the ways in which the negotiations, we know, and our sister from Memory has said this. Unfortunately, the worst countries, the worst states in the negotiations come from our part of the world, and Memory has already. So I could add a couple, but that's fine. With Diana, who has been an amazing influence on the Arab Caucus convening, we have done a number of things. I would like Diana to talk about the youth convening, but we've had a couple of online consultations, one with the network and one broader than the network, which included also the training that we used to do in person in the before the pre-COVID. The last point, we've already had our first Arab Caucus convening, and it's been, there's an issue that I want to, I'm not gonna, this is an issue for us to discuss in terms of the limited participation of independent feminists from the region, and it has something to do with what is happening with the region, the position vis-a-vis UN spaces, etc. But I think what is important about this is, and that's a conversation that needs to continue beyond CSW and in the runner-up to Jeff, etc. How do we safeguard the Arab Caucus space as a space for women and those who identify as women to talk about their priority and what they want to do? You know, this is not a space for Arab men to lecture us on what we should be doing. This is a space, one of the very few spaces for Arab women. So that's a challenge that we need to figure out by ourselves. It's, of course, it's a challenge beyond the Arab Caucus space, but in this case, it's something for us to figure out. With this, I'd like to stop, and I think Diana has a couple of things to add.
Thank you, Lena. I think we can always count on you to say things as they are and cross the T's and dot the I's, like we say. From the youth perspective, we also had a meeting recently in preparation for the CSW, and our different speakers, they came together, and we also discussed the themes that our colleagues from the regions have already mentioned. And we know that women in public are being attacked, they are being violated, and they are being discriminated against, and they are attempting to diminish the value of the work they have conducted in their careers. So we see this as a recurring theme in our different countries, and there is a rise in violence against women, especially when it comes to the digital space. That is something that we are trying to fight against. And just to keep it brief, I would also like to mention that we introduced the Doria Fund recently. I think I'm not seeing it. So the Doria Feminist Fund is a regional fund that was initiated by Muzen Hassan and Nazra from Egypt. And it offers opportunities for young groups who are unregistered to have co-funding. And it also supports groups from the LGBT community and allows the space for those who...
You're muted. Diana, you're muted.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so this fund is for the crowdfunding and knowledge production, and it's also could give us a chance to mentor younger groups from others who are working in the region. I will just leave the time for Nisreen before we run out of time. Thank you.
Yes. And I just want to take 30 seconds to thank Nisreen a lot. We've been working together for 2 years, and Nisreen's been a wonderful feminist ally. And I'm delighted, Nisreen, that you're with us.
Thank you very much, Lina. It's a mutual pleasure, and I'm so happy to be here with all the sisters and all the colleagues in this important event. I would like to take my intervention to complement what Lina and Diana were saying, and I would like to take it more from a process and outcomes perspective. I mean, as you mentioned, Huri, like the Arab states is a very distinct region. It is part of the MENA region, it is part of Africa, and it's the highest region with the most conflicts in the world. So from a UN Women's perspective, I'm so happy to say that this month, it is the anniversary of the Women and Feminist Civil Society Network that was established by civil society from the MENA region, a civil society owned and led process. Our role was just to support this network to come together, and through UN Women's convening power, we tried to provide the spaces and the platforms and the technical support for this network to come on board, especially that the people were really doing this on a voluntary basis. There were no incentives, but they were coming and meeting every single week since the eruption of the COVID. And this would take me to the journey and to the arc of the MENA region. So since the establishment of this network, there had been a plan that the engagement and the aggressive diplomacy of those civil society and women organizations is complemented, and it's not ad hoc. So the plan was that to have an engagement in CSW, to have an engagement through the Generation Equality Forum, and later through the action coalitions. So just to start, the process started with this network identifying 4 priority areas as stemming from the region. Through these priority areas, this network developed 4 policy papers on violence against women, bodily integrity, sexual rights, economic justice, and women, peace, and security. The interesting thing from this region is that those 4 policy papers were not only like developed and just put on the shelf, but no, they were also integrated in the position paper coming from the civil society organizations in their consultation on CSW65. They were also part of the priorities in the discussions of the civil society organizations within the African Union consultation. So more as part of Africa and also as part of the Arab states. And this is also part of their engagement in the Generation Equality Forum in terms of trying to influence the civil society manifesto that is going to be announced in Mexico, the youth manifesto that is going to be announced in Mexico. So all of this, it's an arc of work. It's an aggressive diplomacy coming from this region. What I really like very much, in addition to what Lina and Diana mentioned, are 2 things. So this region, in all the policy papers, they really prioritized the full implementation and the monitoring and evaluation frameworks of the regional and global commitments to which member states have signed. So it's not only about the thematic areas or priorities, but mostly about the accountability framework. So this is number 1. Number 2 is that this region have been always emphasizing the need to change the narrative from women and girls being victims in this volatile region to women and girls being change agents. So this is also the language used in all their documentation. I would like also to conclude by saying the important role of the youth and how UN Women is supporting the youth engagement. So we have a youth agora. It's a task force from youth from this region. They are working on their 2030 agenda that is going to influence the Generation Equality Forum and the Action Coalition. They are working now on developing a peace and mediation program to create a strong cadre of young feminist peace builders that can also be aligned to the Women, Peace and Security Compact. We are also supporting the youth and the civil society organization through a mentorship program called Women in Technology. And this is in partnership with the private sector, Google, IBM, and so on and so forth. All this, it's a package of knowledge, it's a package of advocacy, it's a package of aggressive diplomacy that is being very much well packaged to be feeding into the CSW, but also feeding into generation equality and the action coalitions. And I really would like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to be on board with the generation equality. It's a multi-stakeholders gathering. It is the place where civil society and youth will be center staged. So please be there and please continue your excellent work. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Lina is absolutely right, Nasreen. It's an honor to have you here to give us the perspective from UN Women at region and globally. I mean, everything you all said applies to all regions as well. And then there's some unique unique cases in some. I'm gonna, again, I feel like I'm rushing through everything, but this is important. It's recorded. There's so much rich material here for people to listen to. We will share this with the 25,000 participants on our platform. Last but not least, as you all know, NGO CSW before the regions was NGO CSW New York, Geneva, and Vienna. We have been established for decades and been doing this work with our global sisters for years. Well, this year, I am so happy to say that we, as every year, we established this committee. This year we called it the Advisory and Research Committee, led by no other than my past chair of NGO CSW, Susan O'Malley, and past executive committee member, Erica Higby, who did an amazing job collaborating with our sisters in Geneva and Vienna. And I want you to also meet Stacy and Lori, who will also comment on what they do in their regions. But now I'm going to hand the floor over to Susan and Erica. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hori. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I'm in the dark a little bit here, but it's very early in the morning where I am. I'm just going to briefly talk about our group. It's basically a mini version of what we're doing right now. It's just been an excellent opportunity for us to meet with all of the regions and developing our advocacy for this CSW. The members in our group included Stacy Drylora, who's from Geneva, Lori Richardson, Vienna, which Hori just mentioned, Lois Addo from Ghana, Lana Finnegan from Jamaica, Carol Shaw from Australia, Diana Abu Abbas from Lebanon, who just spoke, Mabel Bianco from Argentina, who also just spoke, and Ani Karapyan, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, from the Armenian International Women's Association, who was our young activist coordinator. So during our first meeting back in October, the Advocacy Research Group discussed the UN Women Report on the expert group meeting in October that they had. We used this preparatory document to guide our discussions and research early on. We talked about transformational change, decision-making, informal spaces, representative institutions, social norm, and violence against women. I have to say, it wasn't as easy as it sounds. We learned a great deal during these discussions. Issues aren't the same everywhere. However, we all gained a richer understanding of what the priority theme really looks like around the world and at the local level. I know I did anyway. After meeting every other week for almost 4 months, some of us attending at 6 a.m. and some of us at 1 in the morning, we had 6 key critical issues to focus on that were important and relevant to all of us. I'm just summarizing these here, but we decided that addressing barriers to diversity of women in leadership roles, addressing discriminatory laws and a lack of affirmative policies, addressing unregulated public spaces, particularly social media, that facilitates abuse and violence, addressing the need for gender mainstreaming and quotas in government institutions, addressing a lack of community engagement and education, addressing violence targeting women in leadership roles were our most important issues that we wanted to develop advocacy strategies around for CSW65. After we identified the issues and actions for advocacy, we set about researching each of them, particularly focusing on finding precedent for our issues and actions in UN documents and reports. We consolidated our research into one-pagers, including examples, evidence, supporting UN documents, good practices, and enabling policies and legal environments. And we put them on the NGO CSW website, these one-pagers, in the hope that advocates participating in CSW65 might use them as tools for their own interactions. Now I will turn it over to Susan O'Malley, co-chair of the Advocacy Research Group, to walk you through our engagement from there. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Hori, how many minutes do we have left? One?
No. You have about at least 4 minutes.
At least 4 minutes. Excellent. Okay.
But don't forget, Stacy and Lori will say a couple of words after you.
But I'll talk fast. We had some influence. That's the good news. We learned, and you can see that if you look at Rev 2 and what that revision 2 of the outcome document and the things that that we put forth. They're hard to find because it's so reorganized. We learned to argue from precedent. Yes, we did. And we had a number of supportive countries that did help us. Canada, Australia, Sierra Leone. The United States had a wonderful briefing. The UK. And we had a little Vienna cafe with some of them that was experimental, but that worked quite well. However, moving forward, just 2 points. One is, you know that Executive Director Pumzili every year sends a letter to all member states requesting a member of an NGO to be on the country delegation and, I presume, part of the negotiations. So that's a young person and also a member of an NGO. We need to get a list or somehow organize, find out who these people are and organize them to work better with them and to help them and to act as a united NGO community as much as we can. We've got to do that. I think there's a lot of hope there. And the other thing is, you know, we do have a lot of supportive countries. However, our meeting with them was disrupted a little bit by COVID. I think NGO CSW met with a good number of the people on countries on the Bureau, but we need to establish countries, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 from the regions who are our allies and that we can work with closely. I was surprised that when we decided about the Vienna Cafe, the warmth of Australia and the supportiveness and of Canada, and that we need to go back to making those kinds of relationships, because so much is done in relationships in the UN. So we need to be a community of NGOs working to get a stronger outcome document. And we need to have member states who I think a lot are quite, particularly they had such a hard time negotiating on Zoom that when they met with us in this little Vienna cafe, they were so excited. They said, this is the way we ought to negotiate. So we did well, but we can do a whole lot better. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Stacy, Lori?
Okay, Lori, why don't you go first?
Okay, why don't I? Hello, everybody. I'm so honored to be part of this group. Listening to everybody speak has just made me feel really appreciate even more after all the months we've been working together, just what a powerful group this is. I'm Lori Richardson, the chair of NGO CSW Vienna. And I wanted to say a little bit about how this concept of localizing CSW and bringing in NGO participation on the local level started here in Vienna. I want to agree with Bandana. What she said earlier about this virtual meeting format has given us more opportunities for direct participation in a very strange way, but it's true. The Austrian government delegation made up the Ministry of Women's Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Development Agency. They had consultations with the Austrian NGOs by virtual meeting. before and during, and tomorrow we'll have another consultation with the Austrian delegation. They also very kindly included us in the briefing and invited us to participate in the briefing from the EU delegation. And I know many of the people on this, in this meeting were there and would agree with me that that was a very open discussion. The EU delegation, even in the virtual format, included a representative from, does include a representative from the European Women's Lobby and the End FGM NGO. And they're talking about wanting to have more NGO participation in their delegation. They heard us, they listened to us, they took on board all of the recommendations that we gave them and spoke very honestly about the difficulties they were having in the negotiations, but also gave me, anyway, reassurance that they were really fighting for the progressive issues that progressive positions on the issues that we all spoke about. And they said back to us, thank you very much. You have hearing the civil society issues and concerns has given us renewed energy and enthusiasm for the negotiations that we're in the midst of, which are difficult. And so
we're running out of time, and I want to make sure Stacey has.
But I just wanted to say it was very important and useful to have had the advocacy research process fed into that we had those issues at our fingertips. So thanks, everybody.
Sorry about that, Lori. Stacey, 1 minute. I have 2.
1 minute. Well, I strategically put myself last because our instruction is not to go and repeat what everybody else has said. So I'm Stacey Lara. I'm president of the NGO CSW committee in Geneva. And our committee basically endorses everything that you have all said. We too find a shrinking civil society space, but we are encouraged by just the brilliant success of the first week and the number of new people that are able to attend the commission because of the virtual nature of the session. So just wanted to say 20 seconds more that, in Geneva, we are uniquely placed in Geneva with the UN here, and in relation with, in collaboration with UN Women here in Geneva, we're able to keep this multi-law going because historically it's a challenge for us to follow up, for all of us to follow up after CSW. But because of the virtual nature, we're able to keep the multi-law going. And for us in Geneva, we're here with the heart of human rights, with the Human Rights Council and CEDAW and the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And so let's just keep that in mind for future collaboration. And in my last 10 seconds, our committee is going to be releasing a publication post CSW that is in connection with a parallel event this week that's on women and girls, human rights, and the United Nations language and terminology. So please participate and help us put your voices in this publication that we will release as a committee. And thank you also to Hori and Ivy for their excellent leadership and for the really stimulating and inspiring collaboration with all of the regions. It's been absolutely wonderful to increase this. I
do want to acknowledge Ivy. Ivy, please, you have the floor. Please wrap us up.
I don't have anything to add. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. And we hope you can join us at the rally on Friday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mabel is leading that, and we're going to have so much fun on Friday. But there's also a lot of caucuses, a lot of meetings. Please enjoy yourself on the platform. Be patient with any glitches or hiccups. It's amazing that it has not shut down and it is still working. Over 700 events did do well. Well, I want to thank my regional sisters. Everybody, please come on. Please yell out whatever you want to yell out before you say goodbye. Lena, I see you. Unmute.
We all speak voices for Turkey. This is it's unacceptable what's happening in Turkey right now.
That is so true. Actually, yes.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity to take part. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
We did it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.